Debbie and I are talking about how the CDC has eroded a good deal of its credibility by embracing all kinds of woke ideology. And a classic example of this is, and you were showing me this.
So preferred terms for select population groups and communities. How could that's
so let's what are the preferred terms?
So basically,
they're saying don't use these. Don't use. Let me do the first one. These are the terms that are now out. You can't use these terms. Don't say inmate. Don't say inmate.
You can't say inmate.
Don't say prisoner. Don't say convict or even ex-convict. Don't say offender. Don't say criminal. Don't say parolee or detainee. So let's hear what we should be saying.
Yeah. So the first one is persons who are incarcerated or detained, often used for shorter jail days for youth detention facilities or other persons awaiting immigration proceedings in detention facilities. Partner, child of an incarcerated person. Persons in pretrial or with charge.
You are a person with charge. Okay.
You're with charge. Persons or on parole or probation. Because see, what they want to do is they want to make you a person. You're not just a convict. You're a person that committed a crime. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Similarly, if you're apparently the CDC says that when you're talking about disability, you can't use disabled. You can't even use differently abled. You can't use afflicted, handicapped, hearing impaired. You can't even use wheelchair bound. Instead,
people with disabilities, people who are deaf or hard of hearing, people with an intellectual or developmental disability, people who use a wheelchair or mobility device.
Now, quite apart from the think of all the time that has gone into composing all this nonsense. They probably had all kinds of committees.
Oh, look at these. Homelessness.
You can't call someone homeless. It's people experiencing homelessness. As if homelessness is an experience.
They actually do this. A mental health, you can't say someone is mentally ill. You have to say...
Wait, some of my favorite words here. Crazy, insane.
Oh, and look at here. Why is the CDC talking about immigration status?
Yeah, you can't... They say you shouldn't call people illegals. You can't call them aliens. You can't call them even foreigners or the foreign-born.
You can't even call them illegal immigrants.
You have to call them people with undocumented status. Or you have to call them asylum seekers, refugee populations. Then you can't use terms like senior. You can't even use high-risk population.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so this is an elaborate, almost an alternative linguistics that they're into here. And here we go to one of my favorite categories.
And we probably can't talk about it on YouTube. But,
well, I mean, I want to look at just the terms that they're saying you should use. Here are some of their terms that they like. They like LGBTQIA. They like pansexual, asexual,
transgender,
two-spirit, genderqueer, gender diverse. So they have bought into this.
Well, I mean, but what's really disturbing is the CDC is supposed to be about disease.
It's a health organization, right?
About viruses, about bacteria, all that stuff, and yet they have taken on this woke culture. And now CDC, this is why we don't take you seriously. This is why.
What does this have to do with health per se?
This is why we can't take you seriously, because you're really not an organization that deals with
well, the CDC must know.
For everybody.
It must know that there is a powerful countercurrent against all this nonsense. There's a whole bunch of Americans, I would say more than half the country, that are sick of all this stuff, don't want anything to do with it, don't want to be party to it. So the fact that the CDC is like, let's go with it, is part of a way of thumbing its nose in advance at those people.
Yeah,
right.
No, it is, but it really bothers me even more than just that it's the optics.
CDC.
It's the CDC, and yet they are complaining that people don't take them seriously, and they think that it's because they dropped the ball on COVID. But they don't even understand what they did. And that's what makes it more disturbing. They don't understand that they are playing politics, and that's why people don't like them. They think it's simply because they're not diverse enough, or they're not or they didn't talk, they basically were too scientific, and they didn't really communicate with the people enough, that they were too scientific, too medical, or whatever.
Well,
No.
Debbie's made the point that, what
No.
would be very terrifying is that if you had a kind of Ebola type of pandemic.
Let's say it was a
pandemic.
virus that was 90% deadly. What would people do if the CDC came to you and told you to wear a mask if you're gonna literally
Or just
die?
take these steps, and what would happen is people would go like, well, you've already cried wolf, you've already given us a bunch of nonsense, we don't trust you now. And so even in a case where the CDC would be desperately needed in a genuine crisis and emergency, it obviously has thrown away, I think is the right word, its own credibility.